And also shout out to rev.com or Restream, I guess. Restream, it lets me kind of post to all my groups and all my pages. So I've actually been enjoying that. So let's go ahead and talk about why you may not be closing sales. And if you're on this call live, go ahead and comment live. If you're watching the replay, comment replay. And then if you can share this, try to get more people to watch. That's always helpful, so I'm not talking to myself. So let's start from the beginning of when you set up a sales call to the end. Now, typically what I find with most people is they lose the sales call before they ever get on the phone because they don't properly market or pre-frame. So first understand, if you're in an industry and there's a lot of competition, the easiest way to grab attention is to hit on a specific pain point or a specific strategy that makes you superior, right? So anyone who knows about me or sees my stuff, they're gonna hear me talk about conversion conversations, which is just a marketing term I use. I could have used a million different words, but that is the term I use. And the reason I use that was most coaches in the industry I see doing X. So I'm trying to get people to understand I do Y. Okay. So immediately from the get-go, when they see my ads or they see what I post, I'm trying to get people to understand, hey, here's usually what you see coaches do. Here's what I do. And this is why it's superior. So I'm already getting them to think differently coming into my funnels. Then once they come into my funnels, I put in a strategic follow-up strategy that's super effective to try to break down any objections before they get to the call. So what you'll typically see in a funnel is people will click, they watch some type of video, they book a call. There's nothing wrong with that. The issue typically though is that their objections are not broken down. So when they get to the sales call, you're putting a ton of pressure on your sales rep to actually dominate, right? To actually, how do I put this? To be as good as possible. And typically what you want to try to do is understand that when you get bigger and you grow a team, you're going to have what I call waste, meaning they're going to mess up sales calls. They're going to mess up messages. They're going to mess up emails. They're going to mess up the ads. And so you need to try to put your team in the best position possible to make their job as easy as possible. So you take a lot of pressure off of them. So that's going to be step number one, is make sure you properly frame. Now, if you're not doing that, what I highly suggest is after someone books a call, either you follow up via text or via messenger based off their answers. Because a lot of times, for example, if someone puts on a sheet, I don't have access to credit and I only have $1,000 in my bank account. It's not that you don't want to help them. It's just realistically you can't, because they can't afford your service, right? And if you are doing coaching, you can't have someone sign up or get in your program if they're not able to afford the service, and you'll have a lot of other free resources that they can use. That'd be one example. Another example could be, hey, I need to talk to my wife. I would encourage them to try to get the wife on the phone with them so you can talk to them at the same time. Another one could be they had a bad experience with the coach. I would delve into that before they get to the call so that you put yourself in a position to win. Because here's the other thing. People think, well, I'm just going to take as many calls as I want, etc., but they don't factor in their mental capacity, how much mental energy they can put into X amount of calls per day. And two, their time. Because if you're on a phone call for an hour with someone who's not serious about buying, that's an hour you could be doing something else, right? So typically what I find is that 90% of the time people are struggling with sales, it's not actually the sales call, it's the things prior to the sales call. They have a poor follow-up. They don't message after the application to clarify questions. They don't have a good front-end marketing strategy that differentiates them from someone else. So if I was going to give examples and tips of what to do before you actually get on the phone, is first, make sure your marketing strategy is clear. Make sure that you're showing people when they look at your ads, look at your content, of what makes you different than everyone else. That's going to be number one. Step number two is after they apply or sign up for a phone call or whatever your funnel looks like, you need to make sure you have a good follow-up process. And that could be either reaching out via text, via DMs, via Facebook Messenger, whatever, to clarify questions. Because what most companies do is they slam their sales reps with a billion calls, but their sales rep wastes a lot of time chasing people down who aren't that serious and filling up their calendars, which means they have to have a bigger team, which means they have to hire more, which means there's more work to manage. And a lot of times smaller teams are better. I like to have as small a team as possible for my growth. So there's that before the call. Now, once you get to the phone call, what I find super effective is make sure if there's a messaging conversation, and an application, that you or your sales team go through that before the call. Because a lot of times what'll happen is they'll do an application, they'll be messaging someone on the team, whether it's me or someone else, and then the sales team is not looking at those conversations. That's super important, because if someone is only looking, let's say, at the application, but they brought up all these concerns in Messenger or DMs or email or whatever, there was a conversation, that's information that the sales team needs to know, because otherwise then they're just starting from zero versus maybe starting from, step number 2 because they have more info. So that's going to be the first thing. After they get on the call and they have all that information, you followed up, etc., I like to set the stage for the call. So what that means is a lot of people get on a sales call and they just dive right in without setting the stage for what's going to happen. So if I'm on a call, I'm going to say, hey, look, here's what we're going to do on the call. Here's the goal. Here's what we're going to go through. And then at the end, these are the 2 options that you can take. And I'm just looking for you to take one of those 2 options. It doesn't have to be salesy and it doesn't have to be pitchy. Now, it can change depending on the sophistication of the buyer. So if someone's had 6 coaches, you're going to have to approach the sales call a lot differently than someone who's had no coaches. Because if someone's had a bunch of coaches, they've been on a bunch of sales calls, they've probably been pressured into buying, they've probably had good and bad experiences. So you're going to have less leverage to force decisions. And keep in mind, when I say force decisions, the goal is not to force someone to do something they don't want to do, but the goal is to force them to make a decision. Ultimately, whether someone says yes or no, it doesn't matter. You just don't want to leave the call without clarity. The worst way to leave a call as a sales rep or a sales team or whatever is when someone simply says, yeah, I just need to think about it, or yeah, I'm not sure about this. That's not a great way to leave a sales call, because it usually means you didn't uncover their objection and they're not serious about buying for whatever reason. So I like to set the stage so that by the end of the call, we can have a very transparent and open conversation. Now there's a lot of things I could do, I could go over, but I'll kind of go over the structure of how I like to set a sales call. Okay. So you're on the call. I like to do what I call a pre-frame. Pre-frame just means let them know what the goal is. Let them know you're going to go over their struggles, things they need help with. And then at the end, you're looking for them to make some type of decision. Okay. The next step of the sales call is ask questions. So ask questions. And when I say ask questions, don't just ask stuff to ask. You want to ask stuff that you actually want to know. So, hey, what are you struggling with? That's good to know. Why? What do you need help with? Okay. What have you tried? Have you done marketing with ads? Have you had coaches? Like, what's been your experience with that? That's information you need to know, because depending on their experiences, they're going to have different pain points. They're going to have different things they care about. And ultimately, your job as a sales rep is, as long as you're being ethical, is to give them what they're asking for. Okay. If someone says, I need help with this, and you say, well, that's great, but we help with this, that obviously isn't what they're looking for. So a good sales rep or a good sales team is good at uncovering what the biggest need is and then telling them that's exactly what they're going to get. And as long as you're delivering that, right, in the program, you want to make that a big deal. You don't want to talk about 10 other things in the program. You want to focus on the main thing they want. So that's the reason to uncover questions. After we do a question section, then I go over what I just call it the 3 pillars. You could call this whatever you want. But what I usually do in that stage is I give them 2 things that differentiate me from other programs, and then what I call a authority example. Okay, so that could be, so my program's going to do this, and it's going to do this. And that's different than everyone else because they do this and this. And then the third thing is, why should you hire me instead of another coach? Well, the reason you should hire me is because I have this accomplishment, this accolade, and these results. And that's why I'm a better choice over someone else who offers similar services. That's usually how I like to structure it, because no matter what you say your program does different, they're still going to have that question, why should I hire Tanner and not someone else, right? And so, especially when you're not on the call and you're not in control and it's a sales rep, you got to have points that they're bringing up that differentiate you from the competition. Okay, so there's that. After the 3 pillars, I like to do what I call the brief overview of the program. And when I say brief, I mean very brief. I'm talking, here's what's in the program. You get this, 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 this. This is kind of how it works, etc. Do you have questions? I've found that no one really cares about what you actually deliver in the program. Right? They just want results. So end of the day, if I said, hey, if you lick the floor, you'll be a millionaire, no one here would actually care. You would just question whether that actually works, right? But if you believed it, you would probably do it, or most people. Maybe I would. So ultimately you're just kind of you're giving them a brief overview and then let them ask questions. Most people don't care that much unless they've been in a previous program and they'll have a specific question. But typically we just kind of show people, hey, we're going to walk you through all these steps. Here's the support you're going to get. And typically we explain it in a way that they're going to get a lot of support. Okay. So there's that. And then after that, we go into the close. Now, typically on a close, there's a million different ways to close, and it's going to vary on the sales trainer you talk to, and it's going to vary based off the prospect, right? Because a beginner prospect, you can be a little more aggressive. A sophisticated buyer, meaning someone who's been in a lot of programs, you're going to have to talk to them a little different, because trying to force them into a decision isn't usually going to work out as well. And again, when I say force, I don't mean make someone do something they don't want to do. I just mean literally get them to say yes or no, right? Some people will fight you depending on how much experience they have and how many sales calls. So typically what you can go with for as a beginner is do something called an option close. Okay, so you give them two options. So you can come in and say, cool. So typically the price of the program is $5,000, but as long as you pay in full, it's $4,000, right? What most people will say is as long as you pay today. I don't really like that because I think it sounds car salesman-like. I think it's overused, and I think most people don't buy it. But the easiest way to get someone to make decisions is to give them a logical reason to. You can talk about emotions all day, and obviously that is part of sales. But I typically like to give someone a logical reason to say, hey, look, you don't have to sign up today. That's your choice. But if you do sign up today, here's something that you're going to be rewarded for, right? The other way to kind of do it is you can come off with something like, hey, as long as you can put down a minimum deposit, or you can start your first payment, we can go ahead and reduce the first payment plan or whatever. That's the easiest way to do it, right? Or the most straightforward. Now, if you don't want to do that, then typically it's going to come down to just dropping the price and shutting up, and then letting them, go through any objections they may have. And typically when I'm talking to someone who's more sophisticated, so let's say someone who's doing $100,000 a month. Okay. So they're like, hey, Tanner, I'm a 7-figure business owner already. I want to get to 8 figures like you. How do I do it? I'm just going to usually come at them from like an empathetic standpoint and say, hey, look, dude, you don't necessarily need me. Like, you're making good money. If you made this money for the rest of your life, you'd be totally fine. But you obviously don't know how to get to the next level, and that's a goal of yours. So if you want help, it's really simple. You need to look at who's at the level you want to be at, and then who do you feel is going to give you the most support. And so if you feel that's me, let's go ahead and do it. If you don't, let's hang up and go your separate way. But I don't want to do a bunch of back and forth. Like, you're a grown adult. We've both been in this space. What do you want to do? And what kind of person do you want to be? Because ultimately, like, if I get on a sales call at this stage in my career, I'm not going to get pressured into something, because I know sales, and I know that, like, if they're saying, hey, it's only good for today, they're not being truthful, right? Like, if someone came to me and said, hey, Tanner, like, if you don't sign up today, you can't come back. I mean, if you throw someone money, they're going to let you come back. Now, if they say, hey, it's a little cheaper today, right? I believe that. Like, that makes sense. I'm like, okay, so if I don't say it's like $2,000 more, but you're not going to usually have someone who comes back and pays more, right? So when it comes down to a sophisticated buyer, I usually just call them out in the sense of like, hey, man, look, like, you either like me or you don't. It's not going to hurt my feelings. You don't necessarily need me. But if you do want to get to the next goal, you're going to have to hire someone. So here's reasons why you should hire me. And if that doesn't resonate, like, don't hire me. No big deal. And I will say it's easier for me to say at this point in my career, just because I've had more success. So as I have more financial success, I cared less about like forcing people to sign up, because an extra deal or two doesn't really matter. But that's how I would kind of approach sales. Understand, again, just to recap, that most people are watching this live. Again, if you're watching this live, comment live. If you're watching the replay, comment replay. But most people are not closing sales because they don't frame it properly before the call. A lot of work for good teams, in my opinion, is done before the call, so that your sales team is talking to the right prospects, people who are ready, and you fought through a lot of their objections before the call, because it's a lot easier for a guy to get on a call already knowing that the person's had a lot of their objections addressed before, versus you get on a call and they have to fight through everything and explain the program. That's a lot of work to ask a sales guy to do in 1 hour. So for most of you guys, if you're struggling on sales calls, you may not be that good, but I typically will look even before the sales call to see what's happening before they sign up. Do you have a good follow-up process? Are you asking the right questions? Are you following up? because getting on sales calls with a bunch of people who aren't ready to buy is not only going to lower your confidence, but you're going to get people who will never buy in the first place. And then you're going to think you're not good at sales, when in reality, you're just talking to the wrong people. And I got to keep in mind, especially with the team, I have to keep my sales guys' confidence high. So it's not saying don't let them take difficult calls, but it's my job as a CEO to try to give them the best chance possible. So hope that makes sense, guys. If you need more help, you can shoot me a DM or go to eliteCEOs.com. Check out some of our testimonials. I hope this call was helpful. I try to go live at least once a week. So you guys let me know in the comments, what type of other content would you like to see, or what types of other subjects you would like me to speak on, and I'll try to make sure I do that on a weekly basis. So appreciate you guys so much. Hope this was for anyone who is in my paid programs. I'm about to go live in the Elite Strategy Secrets group. That's for anyone who's bought any of my programs, and I do a live Q&A following this call. So if you're in that, I'll hop over there now. For anyone who's not, if you buy any of my courses, I do a live Q&A where you can come on and ask anything once a week. Again, appreciate you guys for the support. Hope you have a